Before there were Twitter threads and TikTok explainers, there was the Dash. It was a time when gifs were gospel, text posts were prophecies, and fandoms waged war in tags like ancient kingdoms, fighting over sacred land. This wasn't just about fictional characters kissing. This was about pride, identity, community, control, and sometimes just pure chaos. Welcome to the wars that broke Tumblr. Episode 1, The Shipping Wars. To understand the shipping wars, you have to understand the battlefield, and in 2013, the battlefield was Tumblr. More than just a blogging platform, Tumblr was the fandom capital of the internet, a kingdom ruled not by logic, but by vibes, memes, and the reblog button. The Tumblr fandom wasn't a subculture, it was the culture. Everything from your URL to reblog tags could tell people where you stood. Shipping, headcanons, meta-analysis, slow burn fanfiction that could rival epic novels. It all thrived on Tumblr, and it wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. But with that freedom came intensity, and with intensity came conflict, because in the fandom capital, nothing was ever just fun and games. Before the wars, there was peace, or at least the illusion of it. Characters exchanged a glance, a touch, a moment of tension, and Tumblr noticed, and then Tumblr obsessed. It started slow, fanfiction, fan art, gifs that looped a look 1 second too long, but soon, entire identities were forged in the fires of will they, won't they. Shipping became a league, a lifestyle, a declaration. People didn't just like a ship, they were that ship. Fandoms formed like nations, URLs changed, bios aligned, tags were filled with love letters and analysis so detailed it could pass for academic research. The ships were rising, and so were the stakes. It didn't start as a war, just a few disagreements, a couple of tense posts, some tagged replies with hey, maybe don't put that in the main tag. But on Tumblr, conflict spreads fast. One post becomes a debate becomes a fight becomes a movement. The match was the canon, the fuel was shipping, the spark, people who care too much, which on Tumblr meant basically everyone. But suddenly, users weren't just defending their ships, they were defending their values, their identities, the right to interpret stories on their own terms. People who once reblogged each other's fan art were now blogging each other over a tag, and somewhere in the chaos, the tone shifted from passion to paranoia, from excitement to delusion. The conflict had ignited, and it wasn't burning out anytime soon. What started as debates about fictional relationships turned into moral crusades. Around this time, a new divide took a hold of the Dash, the pro-shippers and the anti-shippers. Pro-shippers believed in full creative freedom. Fiction is fiction, even the messy stuff. They argued that tagging, filtering, and curating your experience was the way to go. Anti-shippers believed some ships crossed the line, that there were things that shouldn't be romanticized, even in fan works. To them, some content wasn't just distasteful, it was dangerous. And let me tell you, the debate didn't stay civil for long. Call-out posts, block lists, and vague reblogs that turned into accusations, mass reporting, and harassment campaigns. The lines between critique and attack blurred. Suddenly, fandoms were not just about ships. It was about ethics, about safety, about who belonged in the space, and who needed to be deplatformed. This wasn't just shipping discourse anymore. This was Tumblr's fandom culture, fracturing in real time. By the time the dust settled, no one really knew who won, or if anyone did. Dashes that were once full of fan art and excitement were now ghost towns. Friends had blocked each other, blogs had been deleted, some users left the site entirely. The joy of shipping had been replaced by paranoia. People second-guessed every reblog, every tag. Posts came with disclaimers, content warnings, apologies in advance. Tumblr, once the fandom capital of the internet, was now scattered, fragmented, turned into echo chambers, private blogs, and reblogs with the tags turned off. Some tried to pretend it never happened, others rebranded, moved fandoms, changed URLs like survivors starting over, such as when Hiroshima got their shit rocked. It was a wasteland. And yet, people stayed. Even in the ruins, they kept posting, kept shipping, because for all the drama, all the fighting, Tumblr was still home. But things weren't the same, and they wouldn't be. Not after that. So, what was all of that? Was it about two fictional men and a decades-long queerbait? Yeah, but also no. It was about so much more. People poured themselves into these ships, into fan art, meta and text posts with 3,000 notes and no punctuation. It was messy. It was obsessive. It was kind of beautiful. And yes, it got bad. You know what? It got really bad, but underneath all the yelling, there was something very human going on. Fandom was where people found each other, found language for things that hadn't been named yet, found comfort in characters, in community, even in chaos. Tumblr made everything feel bigger, more urgent, more personal, because on here, it always was. Anyway, that was the shipping wars. Tumblr survived, barely, and so did we. The Dash was never the same after 2013, but trust me, there are other wars, because when it comes to Tumblr, the conflicts were just beginning. Sorry in advance. Previously, on Wars That Broke Tumblr, the year was 2013, the fandoms were shipping, the bloggers were spiraling, and somewhere in the crossfire, a gay angel romance nearly brought an entire website to its knees. Episode 1 chronological the shipping wars, a battleground of OTPs, fanfiction, and emotional war crimes, but what happens when online obsession meets offline rage? Enter 2014, a new force emerges, not from the fandoms themselves, but from the deep, festering underbelly of Tumblr's antagonist class, the trolls. These weren't your average anons, these were self-proclaimed anti-fandom warriors, armed with nothing but blunt takes, rage bait, and a complete disregard for the sacredness of fan tags. The battlefield had shifted. This time, it wasn't ships fighting ships, it was outsiders storming the gates. And what started as petty provocations quickly escalated into full-blown tag raids. This is the story of how Tumblr's most sacred spaces, the fandom tags, were invaded, corrupted, and weaponized, and how in the aftermath of the shipping wars, this space of the internet found new ways to burn. And without further ado, let's get into the wars that broke Tumblr. Episode 2, the tag raids of 2014. It always starts with silence, not peace, just silence, the kind of uneasy stillness that settles after a major catastrophe. By early 2014, the shipping wars had left Tumblr scarred, friendships ended, discourse tags were radioactive, and even the most diehard fandom bloggers were starting to log off, if only temporarily. But make no mistake, the war wasn't over, it had simply gone cold. The fandoms were still out there, Doctor Who, Supernatural, Sherlock, Attack on Titan, each licking their wounds, side-eyeing one another across the digital no man's land. The distel truthers had gone quiet, but their memes still circulated. The anti-shippers were regrouping in a shadowy discourse side blogs, and in the background, a new sentiment was beginning to form. Not anger, not grief, resentment, because while fandoms had always fought among themselves, something had changed. The endless drama made Tumblr into a spectacle. Fandom behavior had become meme-worthy, embarrassing, and most dangerously, mockable. As the three big fandoms, you know the ones, tried to rebuild their little empires, a different kind of user was watching. Not a shipper, not a fan, but an observer. Delusioned, detached, and increasingly hostile. They didn't want to win the discourse, they wanted to burn the discourse down. The fandom Cold War wasn't marked by open fighting, it was marked by tension, passive-aggressive posts, shady tags. People weren't dragging each other, they were watching, waiting, lurking, because sooner or later, someone was going to snap. And when they did, all it would take was a single reblog to trigger the next war. No one remembers who fired the first shot. Some say it started with a supernatural post. Others blame the Homestucks. One theory, it was just a bored 14-year-old trying to be funny, and for a moment, it was. But under the surface of the shitposting and spam, something deeper was brewing, an ideological split that wasn't just about ships or tags anymore. It was about how people believed Tumblr should function. On one side, the fandom purists, people who saw Tumblr as a sacred space, an escape from the real world where tags were for fan art, fic recs, and emotionally devastating meta. To them, the raids weren't funny, they were violations. And on the other side, the chaos agents, users who believed the fandom culture had gone too far, that it had become toxic, self-absorbed, performative. They saw the raids not as trolling, but as correction, a moral reckoning, a reality check for people who took their fictional obsessions way too seriously. This was the moral divide. The fandom side claimed that their spaces were being harassed, their joy trampled on. The raiders claimed that they were pushing back against entitlement and cringe culture. Both sides believed that they were in the right. Both believed that they were defending Tumblr's soul. And just like that, the raids became politicized. Suddenly, reblogging a cursed meme into the Sherlock tag wasn't just annoying, it was resistance. Flooding the anime tag with stock photos of spaghetti, a statement. And for the fandoms, pushing back wasn't just self-defense, it was preserving community. The battle lines were no longer drawn around fandoms or ships, they were drawn around ideology. And the thing about moral crusades on Tumblr, they never end well. The dam finally broke. Somewhere in the early months of 2014, what started as scattered trolling became something else entirely, coordinated, relentless, and completely unhinged. The tag raids had officially begun. Fandom tags that once held curated fanworks and emotional essays were suddenly flooded with cursed images, memes, and bizarre anti-fandom manifestos. The Supernatural tag was hit first, then Doctor Who, then it spread like a virus. The methods were simple. 1. Find a popular fandom tag. 2. Post the most chaotic, off-topic content you can find. 3. Watch the meltdown, gore posts, shock images, screen caps from the B-movie, dozens of JPEGs of Sonic the Hedgehog with no context. Nothing was off limits. Some raiders even used bots to mass port irrelevant content, spamming tags with such frequency that normal content was drowned out in seconds. And it wasn't just visual spam. Some users weaponized discourse itself, posting inflammatory takes with the sole purpose of enraging as many people as possible. Your fave is problematic. Shipping is abuse. Anime fans touch grass challenge. Boom. Dozens of reblogs. Instant chaos. The fandom response was all over the place. Some bloggers tried to fight back, reporting users and mass blocking. Others fled, creating new clean tags in hopes of escaping the mess, adding things like #supernaturalsafe or #attack-on-Titan are only to their posts. A few brave souls tried reasoning with the raiders. That did not go well, and some fandoms retaliated with their own raids, fanon versus anti-fanon. Some wars reignited. Even fandoms that weren't being targeted started picking fights just to stay relevant. It was digital bedlam, and at the center of it all was one undeniable truth. Tumblr was no longer just a platform, it was a battlefield. By mid-2014, the raids were no longer just a nuisance, they were a fact of life. Every fandom on Tumblr knew the routine. Open your tag, brace for impact. Scroll past the gore, scroll past the memes, try to find your fan art in the wreckage. But fandoms didn't just sit there and take it, they adapted. Welcome to the fandom front lines, the first line of defense. Tag migration. If the main tag was compromised, users would just create new ones. #supernaturalsafe, #SNK, fanart only, #Sherlockians unite. These tags were quieter, harder to find, and most importantly, not yet rated. Of course, once word got out, the raiders would follow. It was a digital arms race. Fandoms also began posting elaborate disclaimers and tag warnings. Do not raid this post. Fandom positivity only. Some even created tagging codes only insiders would recognize, turning ordinary tags into hidden pathways for true fans to navigate through the noise. Then came the counterattacks. Certain fandoms, especially the larger and more organized ones, decided enough was enough. If the trolls wanted war, they'd get one. Entire threads were dedicated to identifying known raiders. Call-out posts flew like missiles. Block lists circulated with military precision. Some fandoms even created group chats in Discord servers specifically to coordinate defense. And let's not forget the passive aggressives, the ones who reblogged troll content ironically, flooded their dashboards with sarcasm, and replied to every raid with a condescending, "Okay lame-o." But here's the thing, every time fandoms tried to defend themselves, it gave the raiders exactly what they wanted, a reaction. The more organized the resistance became, the more trolls escalated. It wasn't just about disrupting content anymore, it was about proving a point. To the raiders, fandoms were fragile, overinvested, and easy to provoke. To the fandoms, the raiders were harassers, bullies, and everything wrong with Tumblr. Both sides thought they were winning, neither side realized just how much damage had already been done. By the end of 2014, the raids had left Tumblr in shambles. Fandoms were fragmented, tag spaces were unreliable at best, hostile at worst, entire blogs went dark, others rebranded entirely, ditching old usernames, switching fandoms, or just disappearing without a word. And what remained? Filter culture. If you couldn't stop the chaos, you could mute it. Users began creating personalized defense systems, browser extensions, Tumblr savior blacklists, XKit tag filters. Some dashboards looked more like military-grade radar screens than social platforms. You'd see a beautiful fan art post with 10 tags underneath, 7 of which were just disclaimers and warnings. #no discourse, #not ship hate, #please don't raid, #fandom safe zone, as if hashtags could stop a digital bombardment from happening. There were whispers that Tumblr staff might do something. They didn't. The platform remained a lawless wasteland maintained by vibes, plugins, and collective burnout. The only real policy was don't feed the trolls, but by this point, the trolls didn't need feeding. They had already eaten, and they were full. Meanwhile, a new type of Tumblr user emerged, the cynic, someone who had seen too much, reblogged too many discourse posts, witnessed too many mutuals fall in the great tag collapse. They didn't care anymore. They posted memes. They posted shit posts. They refused to tag anything. They were done pretending this site had rules, and in a way, that was its own kind of peace, because while some fandoms rebuilt, others scattered, some never recovered, and for the rest, they just kept scrolling. So, what did we learn? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The tag raids didn't end with a bang. There was no peace treaty, no final boss fight, no meaningful resolution. Like most things on Tumblr, it just faded. People got tired, the chaos lost its novelty, the rest of us developed emotional calluses. But what makes the tag raid so fascinating, at least to me, is how sincere it all was. Tumblr is often dismissed as a mess of fandoms, memes, and weird discourse spirals. And it is, but it's also a place where people cared a lot, sometimes way too much. Fandom wasn't just entertainment, it was identity. And when you poke at that, even with a joke or a meme, people react like you set their house on fire. The tag raids weren't just trolling, they were a culture clash between fans and anti-fans, between sincerity and irony, and people who took the internet personally, and people who weaponized that exact instant for sports. And somewhere in the middle of that mess was a platform that enabled all of it, quietly, passively, with no real guardrails, just vibes. And maybe that was what made Tumblr feel so wild, so unhinged, and so real. It was the last big internet space where the lines between sincere and satirical completely dissolved, where people could wage tag wars over fictional gay angels one day and then reblog cursed memes with no context the next. So yeah, the tag raids were retarded. They were also kind of a beautiful dumpster fire. They changed how fandom operated online, probably forever. And thus concludes another deeply unnecessary but historically vital episode of Wars That Broke Tumblr. What did we accomplish? Nothing. Who won? Nobody. But did we learn? Emotionally? Yes. Academically? No. Spiritually? Maybe. The tag system never recovered. Fandoms learned to cope through memes, mutual block lists, and pretending like nothing ever happened. And Tumblr did what it always does, shrugged, reblogged something cursed, and kept moving. But don't get too comfy, because while Tumblr was tearing itself apart from the inside, a much dumber disaster was unfolding outside the digital realm that involved corporate mishandling, social media hellscapes, and a children's inflatable toy that would go down in internet history. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, the ball pit campaign, or how not to host a convention. Seriously, it's worse than you think. Previously on Wars That Broke Tumblr, Tumblr burnt. First the shipping wars, fandoms imploded over gay angels and fictional boyfriends, then the tag raids of 2014, trolls and anti-fandom crusaders hijacked the tags, turning safe spaces into cursed war zones. Fandoms were exhausted, the discourse cooled, and for a fragile moment, Tumblr knew peace, but peace never lasts here, because while the site was recovering from emotional whiplash, something else was happening. Not a post, not a reblog, a convention, a real one in person, organized by Tumblr users for Tumblr users. They called it DashCon. It promised guest panels, fandom unity, and a celebration of Tumblr culture. What it delivered in reality was a $17,000 emergency, a plastic ball pit, and the final nail in the coffin for sincerity on this platform. This is where things stopped being ironic and started being tragic, where fandom stopped believing in itself, where the dream of Tumblr drowned in a pool of dollar store plastic. This is the Wars That Broke Tumblr, Episode 3, The Ball Pit Campaign. There was a time when Tumblr believed in something, fandom, community, chaos, but like collaborative chaos, they tried to bring Tumblr into the real world, not as a post, not as a meme, but as a convention, DashCon, named after the dashboard, because of course it was. It promised meetups, fandom unity, panels, guests. It promised Tumblr in person. People were hyped, they raised money, they built a schedule, they got welcome to Night Vale. It looked legit, at least from a distance. The community felt like this is our moment, but Tumblr has a habit of flying too close to the sun with a ball pit made of wax behind the flyers and promo graphics. DashCon was held together with duct tape, spreadsheets, and raw delusion, and before the doors even opened, the dream had already started to crack. Day 1, the con had barely begun. Then the announcement, DashCon staff told everyone they needed $17,000 immediately or the hotel staff would shut everything down. No warning, no backup plan, just give us the money now.
I'm here at DashCon, we're about to get things out, unless everyone in this room can accumulate $17,000.
Organizers claimed the hotel had changed the payment terms at the last minute, demanding everything up front instead of in scheduled installments. Whether or not this is true is still debated. They passed around donation jars, directed people to PayPal. Some attendees were crying, some were skeptical, and some donated away.
Any little bit helps. $10, $1, anything helps for us to stay here until the rest of the weekend.
Yes, we have donation back.
Lachlan has the donation back up here.
Because Because they didn't want the con to end, within an hour, staff claimed they raised the full amount, but there was no receipt, no official confirmation, just the blurry photo of a hotel invoice with the hotel name blacked out. That only made things worse. The trust was already cracking. People on Tumblr started questioning everything, like why wasn't this handled beforehand? Where was the backup funds? Was this just a giant scam? Just to name some of the questions on hand. While some users defended the organizers, others called it the beginning of a con collapsing under its own weight. The $17,000 moment became the event's defining symbol, poor planning, bad optics, and a sense that the entire weekend was running on borrowed time. Even if DashCon wasn't officially cancelled, the illusion that it was ever under control was completely shattered. DashCon wasn't dead yet, but it was falling apart in real time. VIP attendees who had paid extra for perks, panels, and guaranteed access were left with almost nothing. Events were cancelled. Headliners like Welcome to Night Vale had bailed. Some didn't even know they were still being advertised after they dropped out.
I know you guys have been waiting for an extremely long time, but unfortunately what I have to tell you guys is that basically Night Vale just walked.
So what did DashCon offer these disappointed VIPs in return? An extra hour in the ball pit. This wasn't a joke, this was the actual offer. The ball pit itself, an inflatable kiddie pool, roughly 6 feet across, half inflated, filled with a thin layer of cheap plastic balls placed in a corner of a massive, mostly empty room, which also featured a bouncy castle, a couple of sad folding tables. It was technically listed on the con schedule, but no one thought this was going to be the con's main attraction. Within hours, the phrase an extra hour in the ball pit took on a life of its own. Tumblr exploded. People started making fake VIP passes, ball pit loyalty cards, mock reblogs of ball pit war flashbacks. It was the kind of internet meme that moved faster than logic. Rumors started spreading too, that someone peed in it, that it got deflated, that it was later duct taped shut. Some of these are unconfirmed, others are just probable. The ball pit became the symbol of DashCon, of what it promised and what it actually delivered, of good intentions, cheap materials, and fandom dreams collapsing under poor logistics. You couldn't ask for a better metaphor or a worse one. This wasn't just Tumblr history, this was Tumblr mythology. DashCon was unraveling, the schedule was gutted, panels cancelled, and guests missing. The trust among attendees was eroding rapidly. The cancellation of Welcome to Night Vale's panel was a significant blow to the group who had been promised payment for their appearance, but DashCon failed to deliver the full amount up front, despite having funds in their account. Organizers couldn't provide the remaining fee in time, leading to Welcome to Night Vale to cancel their appearance. This incident highlighted the convention's financial mismanagement and further damaged its credibility. Other guests faced similar issues. N.D. Stevenson discovered that their hotel room, which was supposed to be covered by DashCon, hadn't been paid for. They ended up sleeping on the Welcome to Night Vale team's Airbnb sofa. The Baker Street Babes also withdrew from the convention due to unpaid accommodations. Attendees who had paid extra for events like Welcome to Night Vale panel were offered compensation in the form of raffle tickets, concert passes, and the infamous extra hour in the ball pit. This gesture was seen as inadequate and became a symbol of the convention's failures. Safety and security concerns further marinated the event. Reports indicated that minors were admitted into adult-themed panels without proper age verification, raising serious concerns about the convention's oversight and adherence to its own policies. The lack of professional, security, and personal and inadequate crowd control measures contributed to an environment where attendees felt unsafe and the event's management appeared negligent. The aftermath of DashCon sparked widespread discourse on Tumblr. Users debated the organizers' accountability, the feasibility of fan-run conventions, and the broader implications for fandom culture. The event became a turning point, signaling the shift in the community's dynamics and trust. By the end of DashCon, it wasn't just the schedule that had collapsed, it was the dream. Before DashCon, Tumblr was sincere. Chaotic always, but sincere. People posted their passions, unfiltered fandoms was intense, messy, obsessive, but it meant something. DashCon broke that. After the ball pit, the memes, the $17,000 incident, and the missing guests, something in the platform's cultural DNA shifted. People stopped trusting group efforts, stopped trusting organizers, stopped trusting each other, and who could blame them? The con that was supposed to celebrate the Tumblr community had in just 3 days become a punchline, a warning sign, a tragic case study in how quickly sincerity could backfire. Tumblr did what Tumblr does best. It made jokes, layer after layer of ironic humor, snarky edits, and meme culture, buried the real fallout. No one wanted to be earnest anymore. No one wanted to be that fan, the one who still believed. And so, the culture changed. Fan projects were met with skepticism. Sincere efforts were side-eyed. Conversations became increasingly hostile, defensive, performative. Some users, like ND Stevenson, publicly shared their own experiences. Their hotel room wasn't paid for. They slept on the Welcome to Night Vale team's Airbnb couch. Reports surfaced that minors had been allowed into adult panels. Security was minimal. Staff were overwhelmed, sleep-deprived, and visibly unprepared. Even those who wanted to believe in DashCon couldn't ignore how just unsafe and disorganized it was. The phrase "an extra hour in the ball pit" became shorthand for every overhyped, under-delivered fandom experience to come. This was the tipping point, the beginning of Tumblr's irony era, the moment it stopped being cool to care too much, and once that shift happened, it didn't reverse. DashCon didn't just end a convention, it ended an era. Let's be real, this episode was supposed to be about fandom and convention chaos. Instead, it became the story of a plastic ball pit and a $17,000 panic attack. DashCon wasn't just a failure, it was Tumblr touching grass and getting allergic to it. The con tried to turn Tumblr into real life, and what did that give us? Canceled guests, last-minute fundraising, an inflatable pool, in a cramped ballroom, and you can't make this stuff up. And the worst part, nobody had to. It really happened. The ball pit was never just a joke, it was a meme, it was a metaphor, it was a shared trauma in primary colors. And yes, we made fun of it, but deep down, we wanted DashCon to work. We wanted Tumblr to be something more, something real. Instead, it gave us raffle tickets and existential dread, so we laughed, we memed, we coated our sincerity in layers of irony and moved on. But something changed after DashCon. People stopped organizing, stopped trusting, stopped trying. The culture shifted, and even now, when we joke about it, we all remember what it felt like. The optimism, the collapse, the meme that became legendary. This was the Ball Pit campaign, a war fought with PayPal links and cheap plastic dreams. And Tumblr, it was never the same again. DashCon wasn't just a disaster, it was a turning point. Not just the end of a convention, but the end of Tumblr's ability to believe in itself. People laughed, they memed, they survived, but something shifted after the ball pit. Tumblr got colder, sharper, more defensive. It stopped being about fun, it started being about rightness. Because what came next wasn't fandom, it wasn't community, it wasn't ideology. The wars ahead weren't fought with memes or shipping drama, they were fought in callouts, in discourse posts, in purity tests, disguised as fandom takes. Your posts were no longer just opinions, they were statements. Your fandom wasn't just your interests, it was your entire moral compass. In Tumblr, it turned into a battlefield. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, Episode 4, The Ideology Skirmish. #DoNotInteractive. Previously, on Wars That Broke Tumblr, we begin with the Great Shipping Wars, chaotic battles fought over angelic boyfriends, misunderstood villains, and the sanctity of the fan tag. Then came the tag raids of 2014, where troll armies and fandom purists clashed in mass posting campaigns that turned the dashboard into a war zone. And of course, who could forget about the Ball Pit campaign, a corporate misfire so cursed it united the user base through mockery, memes, and inflatable rage. These were the early conflicts, messy, absurd, sometimes even hilarious. But all of them were just the warm-up. Before the wars over ideology, there were the fandom wars, shipping battles, tag raids, fandom frenzies that spiraled into full-blown cyber chaos. It was messy, it was dramatic, but at its core, it was still kind of fun. There was a certain playfulness to it, a sense that yeah, this is the internet, it's not that deep. But sometime between the Super Hulock Renaissance and the Great Homestuck Migration, something began to shift gradually, and then all at once. Tumblr stopped being just a fandom playground and started becoming a battlefield for ideology. It wasn't just what do you ship anymore, it became who are you, what do you believe, are you safe to follow. Suddenly, reblogging a post wasn't just sharing content, it was aligning with a worldview. Your bio became a manifesto, your block list a political statement. People weren't shipping characters, they were shipping ideologies. Neurodivergent discourse, Mongai discourse, ace exclusionism. Did you just say queer unironically? Welcome to 2015 Tumblr, the ideological arms race you never asked for. It was the Tumblr equivalent of a Cold War. Not always explosive, but always tense. Every post, every tag, every reply was a part of a larger power struggle over language, identity, and moral superiority. Some users saw this as liberation, a space they could finally be understood. Others saw it as the beginning of Tumblr's crucial implosion, and in the middle of it all, a platform with no central authority, no unfiltered moderation, a user base of chronologically online teens trying to win physiological trench warfare with reaction gifs. This is the Wars That Broke Tumblr, Episode 4. The Ideology Skirmish. Let's jump right into the conflict, shall we? Cause something's about to catch fire, as it always does on Tumblr. By the mid-2010s, Tumblr wasn't just a fandom platform anymore, it was becoming something else, something more fragmented, and a lot more ideological. In the beginning, Tumblr was a mosaic of subcultures, a patchwork of fandoms, aesthetics, memes, and personal blogs. You could stumble across a Homestuck gift set, an anesthetic mood board, and a Sherlock/Doctor Who crossover fanfic, all in one scroll. But as the platform grew, so did the desire to be understood perfectly, not just by your friends, but by your followers, your mutuals, your entire dashboard. And in that pursuit of understanding, people started curating. Curation became codified. Bios weren't just fun facts, they were declarations, labels manipulated, new flags were born daily. Pages started looking more like physiological dossiers than personal vlogs. Neurodivergent, demisexual, e-boy flux, alt-gender, did, ADHD, BPD, plural queer, all valid, all real, but also all increasingly categorized. Tumblr gave people the space to express themselves, but that space slowly morphed into a set of rooms with locked doors. Each tag became its own ecosystem. Reblogs stayed within tight circles. The algorithm didn't push you out of your comfort zone because there was no algorithm, not at all. And when you mix complete freedom with hyper-specific identity politics, what you get is friction. What happens when a platform stops showing you disagreement? What happens when everyone builds their own bubble and never leaves? By 2015, Tumblr was less of a community and more of an archipelagical islands of ideology that barely interacted, unless it was to go to war. The idea of shared culture fractured, and in its place came discourse. At first it was subtle, a post saying, hey, this person did something messed up, be careful. Then came the receipts, then came the chains, then came the casualties. But call-out posts became Tumblr's nuclear option, the go-to weapon of choice for policing behavior, ideology, or just plain bad vibes. Originally, it was meant for serious stuff, abuse, racism, predatory behavior, but Tumblr doesn't do moderation, it does escalation. With it, the definition of harm stretched. You used the wrong term, you reblogged from the wrong person, you didn't put up a trigger warning, you liked a post from 2013 that didn't age well. It became less about the post and more about the person. Character assassination disguised as accountability. A slow shift from what you said is wrong to you are wrong. And unlike Twitter or Reddit, Tumblr didn't have viral mechanics. There were no trending tabs or upvote counters, just chains, reblogs, rumors spreading like wildfire through whisper networks made of dashboard reblogs. Sometimes these posts were justified, often they were based on hearsay, and occasionally entire reputations were destroyed over misunderstandings, or worse, nothing at all. You didn't just risk losing followers, you risked exile, mass unfollowing, and unpersoning, and in the worst cases, dogpiling. It became a game of survival. Know the rules, know the language, stay on script, or get killed. It wasn't just cancel culture, it was call-out culture, with Tumblr flavor, long, emotional, hyperlinked, and dressed in pastel aesthetics. By now, call-out posts weren't isolated events, they were contagious. A single accusation could ripple across dashboards in minutes, mutating with each reblog, inflating with every add-on. The platform had entered its next stage, mass panic. Panic posts weren't carefully reasoned, they were emotionally loaded, urgency drenched, and riddled with all caps warnings, vague allegations, and weaponized guilt, like that infamous chain post. If you follow user, unfollow me now. I don't care who they used to be. No context, no source, just pure digital dread. And because Tumblr had no moderation, no friction, and no pushback from the platform itself, fear spread faster than facts ever could. The definition of harm stretched yet again. Microaggressions, poor phrasing, reblogging from the wrong source, content that wasn't offensive but felt like it could be. Whole genres of content disappeared overnight. People deleted fan art, took down entire blogs, scrubbed years of posts. Not because they did something wrong, because they might be read the wrong way. One popular post said, do not reblog this unless you're a trans, autistic, non-white minor with trauma. It got over 15,000 notes. Another user tagged a post about cookies with #TWFood, #TWComfort, #please don't hate me. People started adding disclaimers longer than the actual content, trigger warnings, content notes, apology tags, content dumps like blacklist lists, and before the viewer even saw the post, one user went viral for saying that they were taking a break from Tumblr because they were tired of apologizing before every sentence. Eventually, people weren't just afraid of being called out, they were afraid of being seen, so they built armor in tags and disclaimers, in preemptive reblogs that said, don't come for me, I'm one of the good ones. This was the Tumblr version of wearing camouflage, not to blend in with the enemy, but to hide from your own side. By this point, Tumblr wasn't just reactive, it was armed. Users weren't waiting for drama, they were scanning the horizon for it, searching tags like discourse, the way soldiers watch radar. And when it came hard. The tags became trenches. Discourse wasn't a conversation anymore, it was a declaration of war. Whole factions formed around beliefs that would have been niche arguments on any other platform. Some of the loudest wars, whether asexuality belonged in the LGBT community, whether queer was a slur or a reclaim, whether misusing a mental health term made you abusive, whether using neopronouns was empowering or attention-seeking. Each of these could have been a discussion, but this was Tumblr, so it became discourse, which meant it became personal. Mutuals turned on each other, entire friend groups collapsed in public, popular blogs with tens of thousands of followers deactivated overnight. People who spent years building communities got atomized over one post. No one was exempt. You could be the perfect poster one day, and the next, you were problematic, blocked, and left to rot in the tags. You could try to explain, you could apologize, you could disappear. It didn't matter, because the war wasn't about facts anymore. It was about loyalty, optics, survival. And survival meant choosing a side, fast, and making sure you were louder than whoever was watching. And by the time it peaked, Tumblr wasn't a battlefield, it was a wasteland, and the loudest voices weren't the most thoughtful, they were the most unhinged. This was no longer about safety, this was about dominance. After the explosion came the fallout. People were tired, burned out, paranoid. Some stayed to fight, others locked their doors, and more than a few just disappeared. Tumblr didn't collapse overnight. It hollowed out, slowly, quietly, and the signs were everywhere. Blogs started going private. Dashboards turned into fortified bunkers. Entire circles of mutuals became echo chambers built on trust or trauma bonding. Filtering became a survival tactic. Blacklist, locklist, soft blocks, hard blocks, DNI tags on posts, DNI tags on bios. The discourse wars didn't just push people to pick sides, they pushed people into ideological silos, where your entire presence online had to be pre-qualified by disclaimers, warnings, and allegiance signals. Even among people who agreed, you still weren't safe, because eventually everyone became someone's enemy. You hadn't just been called out yet, and when survival gets this exhausting, people leave. Tumblr's mass exodus wasn't just about boredom, it was about burnout, emotional fatigue from a platform that treated every disagreement like moral warfare. Some left for Twitter, some fled to Discord, some never came back online at all, and the people who stayed, either they filtered their world down to 5 mutuals and a safe tag list, or they embraced the chaos and went feral. There was no middle ground left, just filters, factions, and fleeing. So Tumblr discourse, that happened. You might be asking, was it really that bad? And to that I say, if you lived through it, you already know. If you didn't, congratulations, you missed the digital equivalent of a Cold War mixed with a group therapy session that turned into a fucking at its best. Tumblr was a space for self-expression, identity discovery, and deeply personal growth. At its worst, it was a paranoia engine running on moral panic and burnout. We were reblogging infographics about trauma recovery, next to posts accusing each other of moral failure for not tagging unreality correctly. It was chaos, wearing a pastel theme. There were real moments of connection, real harm too, but the platform gave no guidance, no structure, so everything became crowdsourced mortality, filtered through 16-year-olds who hadn't touched grass since 2012. It wasn't all bad, it wasn't all good, but what it definitely was all uniquely Tumblr. Some people left and never looked back, some are still here, quieter now, and some of us made a whole video series about it. Discourse culture didn't die with Tumblr, it just migrated, fragmented, mutated. It's on Twitter, it's on TikTok, it's in the comment sections. The platform changed, but its behaviors, they found new soil, because here's the thing no one wants to admit, these ideological battles didn't start online. They were already inside us. Tumblr just gave them tags. The internet didn't make us obsessive. It just gave us the mirror and then dared us to look. So that was the ideology skirmish, and if your brain feels like a Tumblr tag cloud that just exploded, good, you're getting the full experience. Discourse culture might have peaked here, but Tumblr wasn't done yet, because just when things couldn't get more chaotic, the platform decided to break itself on purpose. Filters, flags, tags, gone. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, Operation NSFW, and yes, the site was still down for maintenance when we needed it most. Previously, on Wars That Broke Tumblr, we watched shipping wars detonate entire fandoms. We saw tag raids, weaponized reblogs into culture jamming warfare. We lived through the corporate ball pit disaster and the ideological trench wars that followed. Tumblr's always been unstable, but this time, it wasn't fandoms fighting fandoms, it was Tumblr versus itself. The war ended in silence, not the kind of silence you get after discourse dies down, the kind that creeps in when a purge sweeps through and turns a dashboard into a graveyard. Because on December 17th, 2018, Tumblr didn't just ban porn porn. It banned weird. It banned art. It banned the unfiltered chaos that made Tumblr, well, Tumblr. This is the story of Operation NSFW, the day Tumblr tried to save itself and ended up gutting its own soul. But here's the thing, this didn't come out of nowhere. This wasn't a sudden bomb drop. This was a slow bleed, a ticking clock, shadow bans, censor tags, safe mode filters, all quiet signs that Tumblr was already tearing itself apart long before anyone hit the big red button. The purge was just the final blow. Before the purge, there was the pressure. You could feel it creeping in, slowly, like the heat rising in a room no one's allowed to talk about. At first, it was safe mode. Introduced in 2017, pitched as a safety tool, in reality, a content muzzle, art, memes, fanfiction, all getting flagged, not because it was explicit, but because it was sensitive, which in Tumblr language meant annoying to advertisers. Then came the content warnings, entire blogs randomly triggering age gates, no porn, no violence, just a lesbian book quote, or a drawing with a thigh gap. Congratulations, flagged. It didn't matter if the blog was safe. Tumblr's new filters were built like tripwires and everyone was walking on them barefoot. Search suppression followed. Try typing #lesbian into the search bar. Nothing. You weren't banned. You were just hidden, shadow banned by an algorithm too skittish to say the quiet part out loud. And then there was Verizon. Yahoo had already fumbled Tumblr hard, but once Verizon bought it in 2017, everything shifted. The blog became a business, the dashboard became a brand, and all the chaotic energy that made Tumblr unbearable and iconic, that was now a liability. This wasn't a purge yet, but it was a preview, a slow, quiet censorship, tag by tag, post by post, until one day you open the app and realize Tumblr didn't feel like Tumblr anymore. Every war has a trigger. Tumblr wasn't a meme, a tag, or a fandom meltdown. It was Apple. On November 16th, 2018, Tumblr was suddenly quietly removed from the iOS App Store. No press release, no user warning, just gone. People thought it was a glitch. They joked. The site finally deleted itself. Did Yahoo trip over the server again? But it wasn't a joke. Apple had discovered that CSAM, child sexual abuse material, had slipped through Tumblr's automated filters and was being hosted on the platform. This was the breaking point. Apple doesn't mess around with that, and neither should anyone. They didn't send a stern warning. They pulled the app, and in that moment, Tumblr, a platform already clinging to its cultural relevance, was backed into a corner. This wasn't about user safety. This was about corporate optics. Tumblr had embarrassed Apple, embarrassed Verizon, and exposed how fragile its moderation system actually was. Inside Verizon Media, panic set in. They weren't Tumblr people. They were ad tech people, and now they were in damage control mode. What followed wasn't a fix. It was a scorched earth strategy. Instead of improving moderation tools, instead of investing in human review, they decided to nuke all adult content in one sweeping, AI-powered purge style. This wasn't about fixing a problem. It was about erasing liability in the fastest, most PR-friendly way possible. The result, a vague, sanitized policy, was quietly drafted behind the scenes, one that would go live within weeks, one that didn't care who got erased, as long as Apple was happy. And the best part, they called it a community update. Tumblr didn't take responsibility, they took cover, but the user base could smell the fire coming. Tags started glitching, blogs started vanishing, and the silence from staff deafening. The purge hadn't officially begun, but the countdown had. On December 3rd, 2018, Tumblr posted a simple blog announcement. Starting December 17th, adult content will no longer be allowed on Tumblr. No fanfare, no press tour, just a quiet little post that would change the internet forever. They called it a community guideline update, but what it really was a mass deletion order. The definition of adult content: vague, slippery, corporate, photos, videos, or GIFs that show real human genitals or female-presenting nipples. And just like that, a phrase was born. Female-presenting nipples, a term so awkward, so clinical, so Tumblr that it became an instant meme and a warning sign of just how bad things were about to get. The new policy wasn't targeted. It wasn't nuanced. It was a nuke. If you posted art, flagged. Queer content, flagged. Memes with suggestive tags, flagged. Even reblogging someone else's flagged content could put your blog at risk. There was no trial, no appeal, no context. Tumblr didn't care if it was erotic art, phantom thirst, or just an anime character existing near a knee. If the algorithm twitched, you were out. And the users, they lost their minds. Dashboards filled with protest posts, art blogs wiped clean overnight, people posting goodbye banners, sarcastic ripped Tumblr tributes, or just full-on chaos. The site didn't crash, it collapsed, and Tumblr staff silent. No apology, no adjustment, no explanation, just the sound of content vanishing. The purge had begun, and Tumblr would never be the same again. Once the purge was announced, Tumblr said not to worry, everything would be handled fairly. They just forgot to mention they'd be outsourcing FAIR to a half-blind algorithm trained on vibes. See, instead of real moderators, Tumblr deployed an AI-powered auto-flagging system. In theory, it was supposed to detect NSFW material in practice. It couldn't tell the difference between porn and lasagna. And yes, Garfield fan art was one of the casualties. The AI started flagging everything. Drawings, clouds, stock photos, a lizard, a tree, a cartoon frog, anything with a shadow or a curve too sexy, gone. Users immediately started stress testing the system, posting innocent images just to see what would get wiped. A couch, a sandwich, a shoe, flagged. It became Tumblr's new minigame. How broken is the bot today? But the damage wasn't funny. Legit artist profiles vanished. Queer posts were censored. SFW cosplay and comic panels got auto-deleted. Meanwhile, some actual NSFW slipped through because the bot couldn't recognize nuance if it punched it in the code. And Tumblr staff radio silence. No transparency, no rollback, just a broken system flailing around while users watched their blogs disintegrate in real time. People didn't even know what they'd done wrong. The AI never explained. It just erased. This was moderation by roulette. Flag first, think never. And for a site that built itself on community, weirdness, and creative freedom, this was the last straw for a lot of people. After the purge and the AI catastrophe, there was only one thing left to do: leave. Tumblr's ban didn't just kill porn, it torched entire communities, queer creators, sex workers, fan artists, fandom historians, all flagged, all buried, all told they didn't belong. And if they weren't outright deleted, they were algorithmically silenced, hidden, suppressed, shadow banned into an oblivion. Art blogs disappeared overnight. Reblogs led to dead ends. Dashboards became ghost towns. Even safe content creators started posting goodbye banners. I'm out, find me on Twitter. This site's done. Archive what you can. The exodus didn't happen all at once. It happened in waves. First the sex workers, then the artists, then the fandoms. Tumblr's culture didn't just leave, it fractured. Some went to Twitter, others to Pillow Fort, some to nowhere at all. There wasn't a mass migration point, just scatter. And the silence that followed, deafening. Posts stopped getting notes, tags stopped updating. Entire blogs sat untouched for months. Users were still posting, but no one was listening anymore. Even Tumblr's trending tab looked wrong, like it was waiting for something that wasn't coming back. And through it all, the site pretended nothing had happened. No apology, no course correction, just bots, brands, and the faint echo of a platform that used to be alive. Tumblr didn't die, it just went quiet. So here we are. Tumblr survived, technically, but let's be honest, it's not the same site. What once was a chaotic, beautiful mess of fandoms, queerness, art trash posting, and niche culture now feels like a hollowed out archive. The NSFW purge didn't just delete porn, it deleted people. It erased artists, identities, entire communities that used Tumblr because no one else would take them. It was a warning, dressed up as a policy, a message to creators. We'll let you be here until it becomes inconvenient. And it was done badly, with a broken bot, no appeal process, no apology, no recovery, but that's what makes this episode different from the others. The shipping wars, the tag raids, the DashCon fallout, those were all battles within the community. This was the platform turning on the people who built it, and what's left, a ghost site filled with bots, echoing memes from 2014, the occasional cryptid still blocking like it's 2013, screaming into a void made of nostalgia and broken tags. But there's still something weirdly poetic about it, because no matter how hard they tried to scrub it, censor it, corporatize it, Tumblr's still Tumblr, just not the same one we knew. And if this series feels like a digital archaeology, that's because it is. So yeah, Tumblr banned porn, and somehow managed to ban its own culture in the process. Operation NSFW wasn't just a policy change, it was a digital self-immolation. Clean house, kill the soul, and the fallout still echoing. The site didn't die, it just mutated, because what came after the purge wasn't peace. It was bots, it was stands, it was age discourse, it was a new wave of users who didn't remember 2013, and didn't want to. Tumblr's weirdness didn't vanish, it went feral. Anyway, teaser section begins. Tumblr survived the purge, but it didn't survive intact. Suddenly, anyone over 25 was labeled ancient Tumblr, anyone under 18 was accused of killing the vibe, and every tag war turned into generational trench warfare. Old Tumblr spoke in memes and fanfic, new Tumblr speaks in vibes and trauma posts, and now they're both in the same space, glaring at each other across a dashboard made of broken culture and block lists. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, the age line conflict, taglines like #FandomDon'tAge, they ossify, Hashtag, if you have to ask what DashCon was, you're too young to be here. Hashtag, the call is coming from inside the discourse. Also, someone tried to cancel Garfield. So yeah, Tumblr's doing just fine. Tumblr's been through a lot. It's fought battles over ships, tags, ball pits, ideologies, and even its own body parts. But some wars start with a boycott or a call-out post. Some wars start with silence. This wasn't about content. It wasn't even about morality. It was about time. 2 generations posting on the same hell site under the illusion they spoke the same language. The old guard, the ones who survived the tag raids, the purge, the great exodus, were still here. But so were the newcomers, the discourse kids, the safe space builders. The police tag your post generation, and somewhere along the way, a line was drawn. This is Wars, That Broke Tumblr, Episode 6, The Age Line Conflict. It wasn't a war, at least not at first, but Tumblr doesn't do peace, it just does posting. Tumblr didn't explode. It didn't crash. It just changed, quietly, slowly, all at once. Suddenly, nothing on your dash felt familiar. Not the tone, not the memes, not even the takes, because this wasn't the Tumblr you joined. This was someone else's Tumblr now. There were 2 user bases, unknowingly sharing the same platform. The ones who remembered Mish-Apocalypse, and the ones who were born after it. One group posted like it was 2013. The other posted like it was a classroom, and neither could understand why the other wouldn't just get it. They weren't fighting, yet they were confused, annoyed, exhausted. The old users thought they were being censored. The new users thought they were being attacked. Both were partially right, and yet entirely wrong. It wasn't a tag war. Not yet. It was a generational cold front. One passive-aggressive reblog at a time, and the lines between them, it was getting sharper. They were still here, through the bans, the broken features, the reblogs that led to nothing but regret. Somehow, they never left. You could always spot them. The URLs were a curse, but sacred. Their themes, untouched since Obama's 2nd term, and their blog titles, something like King of Hell site posting, / forever rotting. They posted like no one was watching, because they knew no one was anymore. These were the veterans, forged in the fires of Super Hulak, tempered by the great Misage Apocalypse, emotionally maimed by the dash-aster of 2014. They didn't adapt to Tumblr's changes, they just learned how to ignore them. Every post was irony, every tag was a minefield. They had one foot in fandom and the other in absurdism, screaming into a void that used to care. To new Tumblr, they were unstable, unfunny, sometimes even threatening. To themselves, they were the last real posters. You couldn't explain them, you couldn't reason with them, you couldn't even at them. They had notifications turned off since 2016. They didn't post for followers, they posted out of muscle memory. This wasn't a community anymore. For them, it was a battleground turned ghost town, and they were still haunting it. After the first wave of discourse, something shifted. The yelling stopped, but the tension didn't. Tumblr didn't burn, it froze. Welcome to the Cold War. No more open callouts, no more tag raids, just vague posts, heavy ones. Some of you need to think before you post. If this offends you, maybe you're the problem. Not naming names, but everyone was talking. No one said anything directly. Reblogging without comment became a strategy. Silence became suspicious, and posts weren't just content anymore, they were signals. Mutual checker extensions quietly logged who unfollowed you. Plugins blocked problematic users before you ever saw their blogs. And soft blocks, the new cold shoulder. Posting became about survival. Say too much, you're a part of the problem. Say nothing, you're complicit. Reblog from the wrong person, you've chosen violence. Tumblr became a maze of social landmines, a place where etiquette outpaced intention, where every tag felt like walking on glass. And still, everyone kept posting. No trust, no alliances, no clear enemy, just dashboards full of Cold War detachment and reblogs that whispered, I saw this, I know what you're doing, I'm just not saying it out loud. By now, nobody knew what anything meant. You'd see a post and wonder, was it a meme, a breakdown, a political statement, or all three? There was the rise of the bridge posts that were too sincere to be satire, too absurd to be serious, and too relatable to ignore. They started simple, call out posts for myself, still cringe. If you understood this, you owe me $30 and a fruit snack. Me and the boys using queer theory to emotionally disassociate in a Waffle House parking lot. At first it was funny, then it was personal, then it was everywhere. Tumblr didn't just blur the line between irony and sincerity, it deleted it. Posting became performance art, but the kind where the audience is also the cast, and no one remembers the script. People started building identities around the bridge posts. It wasn't just how you spoke, it was who you were. The tags became therapy, the reblogs became solidarity, the posts stopped making sense, but they felt right. You couldn't call it a joke, you couldn't call it a take. It was just a moment, a vibe, a message, meant for exactly 5 people at 2 a.m. And and it still went viral. There were no sides anymore, just deeply specific energy and untraceable tone. And if you questioned it, you didn't get it, and maybe you weren't supposed to. Alright, let's take a breath. We've covered tag wars, generational divides, Cold War posting, meme identities, and digital ghost towns. And the wildest part, none of this was satire. This happened. This is happening. Tumblr never had a clean timeline. It loops, it spirals, it eats itself, forgets, remembers, then ships 2 war criminals in the notes. And somehow, we're still here. Maybe that's what the age-line conflict really was. Not a war, not a moral failure, just a system pushed too far by burnout, by irony, by the sheer weight of always having to say something. Because Tumblr isn't just a platform, it's an ecosystem, one where trauma and jokes, identity and performance, sincerity and bullshit exist in the same tag. You scroll through the chaos long enough, it stops being content, it becomes folklore, and somewhere in there is you and me and all of us posting through the end of the world like it's Tuesday. There's no neat ending, just reblogs, and maybe that's enough. So, we've talked about the line, we've talked about the generations, we've talked about the vague posts, the soft blocks, the people who post it through 5 fandom collapses and still have supernatural in their bio. And after all of that, Tumblr is still here, unmoderated, unhealed, unbothered, like a haunted house that learned to monetize its ghosts. What started as a generational divide mutated into irony, into identity, into bridge posts made for discourse rebel and Aldrich memes. It's not a war anymore, it's a routine. This isn't a social network, it's an ecosystem powered by nostalgia, drama, and gender. The age line didn't break the site, it just revealed what was already underneath. Everyone here is tired, everyone here is weird, and everyone here has posted through it. But we're not done yet, because the next episode is not about history, it's about recursion. Tumblr reached critical mass, and then decided to do it again, and again, and again, and again. Next time on Wars That Broke Tumblr, Episode 7, The Endless. It didn't end. Everyone kept saying it ended, that the wars were over, that the tags were quiet, that Tumblr was finally dead. But that was a lie. Tumblr doesn't end, it fractures. And the more it broke, the more we post it. Some people left, some people stayed, some people tried to build something new, but wherever they went, the war followed. It's not just the website, it's identity, it's memory, it's chaos held together by reblogs and jokes and mutuals who haven't posted since 2014, but are somehow still here. We watch fandoms collapse. We watch staff make it worse. We watch tags burn and reform under 5 layers of irony and gay angel gifts. This isn't the clean ending. This isn't closure. It's just what's left. This is the final episode. Not because the fight is over, but because it never ends. This is the Endless Rebellion. By the early 2020s, Tumblr wasn't one site anymore, it was 2, and you could feel it in the tags, in the way people reblogged, and what they didn't say. On one side, you had the old guard, people who'd been here since 2011, the mutual core, the aesthetic crowd, the tag essay veterans. They remembered when Tumblr was the internet's weird little art gallery, when you made friends by reblogging the same GIF 10 times with slightly different tags, when the only rule was don't be a dick. Unless it's funny. They built a culture, tag etiquette, blog themes, inside jokes that spanned 5 fandoms. You weren't supposed to reblog without tagging your thoughts. You weren't supposed to comment in that post. You weren't supposed to exist unless you followed the vibe. Then the new wave hit. Post-2018 users, people who didn't grow up with dash etiquette, didn't know what a reblog chain was, didn't care if a post was sacred, didn't ask to reblog something personal. They just hit the button and moved on. They came from Twitter, TikTok, Discord, places with no respect for blog hierarchy or emotional tone. They weren't there for the fandom wars. They didn't care about the shipping discourse. They didn't know who the hell DashCon was. They just showed up and started posting. And the divide, it wasn't just generational, it was philosophical. The old crowd, Tumblr was a digital diary. To the new crowd, it was just a better Twitter. Old users wanted structure, new users wanted chaos. So things started to break. Mutuals only tags became hostile territory. People started putting don't reblog warnings on public posts. Someone breathing the wrong way in the wrong tag could start a week-long call-out spiral. Suddenly, everything was too much or not enough. too edgy, too sanitized, too serious, too ironic. No one could agree what Tumblr even was anymore, and the staff did nothing. They added live streaming, removed features no one asked to remove, kept pretending it was 2013 while the dashboard caught fire. Users started posting like survivalists, rebuilding old blog cultures in hidden corners, creating soft locks, making tag guides for people who wouldn't read them, trying to hold on to a version of the site that had already slipped away through their fingers. Tumblr didn't crash, it calcified. Two sides, same dashboard, different languages. You didn't just follow blogs anymore, you picked the side even if you didn't know it. They didn't all leave at once. They faded. The big fandoms, the ones that used to own the site, Supernatural, Homestuck, Glee, Sherlock, Once Upon a Time, they were Tumblr. They trended every week. They had entire ecosystems, fan art, fanfic, GIFs, crack posts, callouts, breakdowns. You didn't have to follow the blogs. The content found you. And then it just stopped. Some of it was natural. Shows ended. Canon disappointed. People grew up. But a lot of it wasn't natural. A lot of it was exile. The NSFW purge gutted entire fandoms overnight. People got shadow banned. Fics got flagged. Fan art disappeared from search. Shipping discourse turned toxic. The very things these fandoms were built on, exploring, bending, sometimes breaking canon, suddenly became a liability, and when the old communities broke apart, people tried to find new homes. AOC got flooded, fanfic became the bunker, Discord became the group chat behind the front lines, Twitter got the memes, briefly, before it turned hostile. Some people tried Pillow Fort, Dream With, Reddit. Some people just vanish. None of it felt like Tumblr. Tumblr was messy, chaotic. It let you build a shrine and shitpost on top of it. Other platforms were too clean, too loud, too temporary. Some people came back, others stayed, quietly posting into the void like archivists, tagging their fics with no longer in fandom, reblogging their own art from 2013, keeping their tag alive even if no one else was watching. The fandoms didn't die, they scattered. You could still find them if you looked, tucked between personal posts and mutuals only memes, surviving in abandoned tags in deep archive pages. But they weren't communities anymore, they were fragments, lost stories, dead dashboards, posts floating in space with no notes, no replies, just memory. They were the heart of Tumblr, and now they're ghosts in the machine. You can only break a website so many times before people start fighting back, and on Tumblr, the fight was never just against each other, it was against staff. No one really knows who they are, no one's ever seen them, they don't respond, they don't explain, they just update things and then log off. The NSFW purge, that wasn't a conversation, it was a scorched earth policy. Whole tags wiped, blogs nuked, fan art flagged for having knees, and when people begged for answers, staff posted a picture of a crab. Seriously, that was it, a dancing crab. So people started treating staff like a cartoon villain. @staff wasn't just the username anymore, it was a character, the shadowy figure ruining everything behind the scenes, a myth, a meme, a target. People wrote fake emails from staff, made parody accounts, started tagging every bug, glitch, and bad decision with @staff fix your site, and things just kept getting worse. They removed the reply system, they broke the tag search, they added live streaming, freaking live streaming, to Tumblr. Who asked for that? No one. Meanwhile, posts wouldn't load, reblogs would disappear, people were getting shadow banned for saying lesbian, and the trending tab always cursed. Every day, it was just queer Dear Diary entry. This tale came out again, and here's a shoe I found in the ocean. It got so bad, users started doing Tumblr's job for them. They ran their own bug trackers, made user guides, built Chrome extensions to fix the site. Tumblr was running out of duct tape and sarcasm, and the only thing keeping it together was community spite. Staff didn't listen, so people stopped trying. Instead, they made jokes, clown memes, screen caps, fake patch notes, protest posts that got 100k notes, and still nothing changed. Tumblr didn't evolve, it just refused to die, and users, they adapted. They learned to post around the glitches, to build community in spite of the staff, to treat every update like a threat, and every fix like a miracle. The war between users never really stopped, but the war against staff, that became tradition. It came back, not the same way, not with GIF wars or ironic death threats or Sherlock Who posts. This time, it came back uglier, the shipping wars round 2. Except now, it wasn't just fandom versus fandom, it was mortality versus posting, parody culture versus fan interpretation, a war over what was okay to ship and who was allowed to ship it. They called it discourse, but it wasn't a conversation, it was a purity test. Suddenly, everything needed a tag. Dead dove, do not eat, pro ship, anti-ship, minors DNI, problematic. You couldn't just like a ship anymore, you had to disclose it, like a warning label. People started treating ships like politics, blocking users over who they wrote fanfic for, fighting over whether fictional characters being messed up meant you were. AO3 became the bunker, Tumblr became the battlefield. People flooded each other's tags, called out strangers, told others to Control-Alt-Delete themselves over headcanons, made block lists, and do not interact spreadsheets longer than actual fics. And it wasn't just about content, it was about control. Who got the posts, who got to tag something canon, who was safe, and who wasn't. It started feeling like you had to ask permission to reblog. Even fanfiction became territory, people tagging entire works with disclaimers just to avoid drama. People posting entire AUSs anonymously so they wouldn't get doxxed over fictional people kissing wrong, and the tagging weaponized. People would post in rival tags on purpose, to pick a fight, to bait replies, to make a point, or just to prove they could. Suddenly, every ship was a political statement, every reblog was a declaration, every tag was a battlefield, and if you were neutral, you weren't safe either. Silence was suspicious. No one trusted anyone. People started purging blogs they'd followed for years. Mutuals ghosted. Entire fandoms imploded under the weight of discourse. It wasn't like 2013. It wasn't funny anymore. It was exhausting. There were no winners, just less people posting. You'd think after everything, people would leave, after the purges, after the discourse, after the glitchy dashboard and the ghost town tags, but they didn't. They stayed, and somehow, Tumblr came back to life. Not all at once, not loudly, not the way Twitter did with trending drama or TikTok with virality. It came back like a weird little campfire, one reblog at a time. Old formats started popping up again, text post poetry, those me and my mutuals if we were meme chains. Posts looked like they'd been rotting in a 2013 draft folder, but brand new, and the energy, unfiltered, chaotic, sincere, in the most ironic way possible. People weren't posting for clout anymore. This was no algorithm to game, no audience to win over, just posting like it was 2012 again, but worse, and better. Mutuals came back too, not just as followers, but as characters. People would post stuff like, me and my 3 mutuals are 3 rats in a trench coat and one of us is crying. Or, if we're mutuals, you're legally my wife. I don't make the rules. It was weird. It was specific. It was home. Reblog chains got long again. Notes started creeping up. Old blogs that hadn't been posted in years suddenly lit up like they remembered who they were. Tumblr didn't win the internet, but it did something way better. It stopped caring. People posted long screeds about their feelings next to curse polls about frogs. Fandoms quietly rebuilt themselves in their own corners. The tag chaos never fully went away, but somehow it felt manageable, like we'd all accepted the hell site for what it was. Not a clean platform, not a serious one, not even a good one, just ours. It wasn't a comeback, it was survival. A low-effort renaissance held together by reblogs, memes, and mutual delusion, and somehow that was enough. I've been telling this story like a documentary, like it was something I could stand outside of, but the truth is, I was in it, all of it. I was there when the ships were burning. I was there for the raids, the tag collapses. I watched mutuals disappear. I watched people lose their minds over discourse so fast, you couldn't even screenshot it in time. And I stayed, because Tumblr wasn't just a website, it was a place. A weird, broken, glitching, infuriating place. Somehow, it still meant something. We didn't just post here, we grew up here. This was where queerness bloomed in shitposts, where fandoms made whole identities, where people figured out who they were in public, in real time, one reblog at a time. It got bad, and then worse, then quiet, and I think some of us forgot that we were a part of it, not just watching, in it. I saw people turning posting into survival, turn mutuals into lifelines, turn callouts into into culture. And yeah, I laughed at the memes, but I also watched friends burn out, disappear, delete, like Tumblr had swallowed them whole, and still, we stayed. We called it a war because it felt like one, but there weren't sides. Not really, just people posting through the collapse, trying to make meaning out of the chaos, trying to connect with someone, anyone. You can't really explain it to someone who wasn't here. You can show them the screenshots, tell them the stories, even make a whole damn series about it, but they'll never feel it the way we did. The way a reblockchain feel like a conversation, the way a dash refresh could feel like home, the way being seen by the right mutual at the right time could save your entire day. I don't know what Tumblr is now. It's not what it was. It will never be again, but it's still here, and I guess so are we. So, what did we learn? Something about queer theory? Tumblr is still standing. Somehow, despite the staff, despite the porn ban, despite this this wasn't a documentary. This was Tumblr having a breakdown across 7 episodes and pretending it was research. And honestly, that's peak Tumblr behavior. We called it a war. It was really just a slow motion car crash with gay angels, clown memes, mutual drama, and an ever-growing list of block tags. People left, people came back, people reblogged the frog saying me too, and acted like it was the deepest thing they'd ever seen. And maybe it was. The truth is, this website never recovered, but neither did we. And maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Or terrible. I don't know. I'm sick of this shit. But if you were there, if you remember the shipping wars, the tag purges, the age-line discourse, the ball pit campaign, if your post count has commas in it and your brain is 40% reaction gifs, then you know, this wasn't just a site. This was a timeline, a battleground, a diary, a dumpster fire with excellent lighting. So no, there's no moral, no happy ending, just mutuals who haven't posted in months and somehow still show up to like your post at 2 a.m. That's Tumblr. That's all it ever was. We'll see you in the tags. Skipperson logging off before staff adds NFTs or something.